Well, guys, after 3 Underworld films, the movie that I have been dreading the most, I finally had to endure, and let's just get into it. Hey guys, it's Kevin, and this is going to be another movie review for you guys. I've continued my reviews of the Underworld movies, and I was not at all looking forward to this movie, to be honest with you. This movie, to me, I heard was really dumb, and honestly, I really didn't know why they were going to continue these movies after Underworld Evolution. It just seemed like a good ending to the series. And sure, I appreciate Rise of Lycans because I thought it was a well-done prequel, but I don't really know why we need to continue beyond the second movie, other than they really wanted to make a quick buck, so they made more movies, and honestly, I really didn't know how this movie was going to be, and after watching this movie, was this as bad as I thought it was going to be? Pretty much, yeah, this movie is pretty terrible. Underworld Awakening is a awful movie. I really did not like this movie at all. There's like one redeemable thing about it. This is not an epic rant because I didn't absolutely hate this thing, but it's pretty bad. Like, really, this movie is pretty bad, and I really didn't like it at all. But let's get to the plot of Underworld Awakening, which, if you haven't seen the other Underworld films, you're fine, because there's a 5-minute recap of all the previous Underworld films, and instead of it being just vampires versus Lycans, that simple concept, they complicate things in this movie. Basically, because of what happened at the events of the second film, humans now know that vampires and Lycans are out there. They're doing what they can to capture them, get intel on them, and there's this company now called, Antigen, which basically Celine is put in the very beginning of this movie. She's put in this facility, basically, separated from Michael, who apparently didn't die after the events of the second movie. I don't know how he survived, but the movie tells you he survived, so I guess he survived. And she's put in this facility, basically. She's eventually rescued by Theo James' character, who introduces her to this girl, Eve, who she has some sort of a connection to, and who everyone is after, and her and David must protect, and that's the basic plot of Underworld Awakening overall. There's a lot more to this movie than that, but let's just get into it, starting off with the cast. Now, when it comes to the Underworld films, you guys know that the one thing that I've given every single one is the acting. I think the acting has been pretty good in all of them. I don't think anyone's done a bad job. Here, though, oh no, the acting was pretty bad in this movie. And Kate Beckinsale remains to be, the one thing that's great about this series. And even she, in this movie, looks like she's bored. She really does. I mean, she's reading these lines, and they just don't really click in the way the other ones did. They don't really do anything with Celine's character, and Celine in general is kind of dumb in this movie. She makes some really dumb decisions, and you really don't understand her throughout all of this, and the thing that doesn't make sense to me is that this was essentially supposed to be a reboot. So why is Kate Beckinsale here? It just feels so out of place that everyone from the other movies are gone, but Celine is still here. It just feels very weird the way they did that. It almost feels like they just needed her back because she was the one redeemable thing about this, but even she looks very bored. I never really loved Celine as a character, but I thought Kate Beckinsale was good as as an actress and did a very good job as a character. It's cool to see her kick ass and everything. We've seen it for 3 movies now. It gets very tiring after a while, and like I said, she really does look bored throughout this thing, and when she can't hold this movie together, pretty much everything else falls apart. Now, India Eisley is a new character in this movie, Eve, who I'm going to tell you right now, it's very quickly revealed she is in fact Celine and Michael's daughter, and she's about as good as she was in My Sweet Audrina, that terrible Lifetime movie that I had to sit through last year. She's about as good as she was in that, and her character in this movie, I really could not stand. It's not because the fact that her character is annoying, it's because all her character does is overcomplicate things. So much of the movie is overriding on her. People want her blood because, oh, she's a hybrid and she has this, blood type that's different than anyone else's. Oh, Celine has to protect her. Oh, Celine has to try to be a mother to her. It just seemed like Eve was just here to further complicate the plot, and it really didn't do anything. It didn't benefit the movie. It didn't add anything to their overall dynamic, and India Eisley is a really bad actress. I know I said that I thought that she was okay, that I thought that she could be a good actress, but here it proves to me she's really not that great. India Eisley, I really did not like Eve as a character. And then Theo James is also in this movie, because who better to replace Scott Speedman than Theo James, and he is extraordinarily bland. I mean, severely. There's nothing interesting about David as a character. They try to give him layers, definitely, movie, but there's really nothing interesting about him. Him and Celine don't have any chemistry whatsoever. You don't feel like this is someone that would bond with Celine, and it feels like such, he just doesn't really fit with the rest of the story, and I just found him to be very, very bland throughout this entire thing. They introduce a sort of coven that he's a part of, but it doesn't really do much of anything. It just feels like it's there to give him depth, and it really did not work at all. And the only other character to really talk about is Michael Ealy as Detective Sebastian, who is another new character thrown into this, and could have been potentially very interesting. There are some good scenes in the beginning that I thought they did an okay job with, but very quickly he's thrown into this. He becomes like an ally of Celine, and it just didn't make much sense to me. I really did not understand this. I get that he was married to this vampire and his wife was burned by sunlight. I understand that, but I just didn't really believe their dynamic. It kind of just came out of nowhere, and I really wasn't a huge fan of him. I think Michael Ealy's a good actor. I don't think he's bad in the movie, but he really did not need to be here. I just felt like he was here to just, have another ally for Celine, so everything could go the way they wanted to here. Overall, the acting here is very wooden. No one's really caring, and in general, this is by far the worst acting in the series so far. As bad as the acting is and as half-assed as it is, that's nothing compared to the directing and the screenplay, because holy shits, the directing here is actually not directed by Len Wiseman, and it very much shows. This feels like a completely different movie altogether, and it fails in almost every regard, honestly. I really did not think the tone worked here, and that's because the first few Underworld films, they worked because they were fun, campy films that knew they're not the greatest thing ever, but they were very self-aware, and they didn't try to be anything else. That's why those movies work. Now, Rise of the Lycans is a different story. That was more of a medieval film, but the first two worked because they were silly. As much as I didn't like the second one, I will still admit it was a fun movie at points. There were fun sequences in that film. This movie is not like that. This is trying to be more serious. It's trying to add darker layers to these characters, and it just doesn't work. Why? Because these characters aren't that interesting to begin with, and the movie doesn't fully understand that. Celine never really has compelled me as a character. I found her to be entertaining, I found her to be fun, but other than the big twist at the end of not episode 3, this isn't Star Wars, at the end of the third movie, when we find out that, Victor was the one that killed her family and not Lucien, other than that, they've done nothing with her character. In this movie, they really don't try to do anything with her. The directing does not work at all. I didn't feel the tone. I didn't really feel anything for these characters. They were in the situation. I just didn't really care, to be honest with you guys. And the screenplay is all over the place. I mean, like I said, they essentially tried to do a reboot here. I think it's because of the fact that they didn't really know where to go with the story, and you can tell that's why they did a prequel, for God's sake. Like, that's why the prequel was made, because clearly they had no idea where the hell to go with this thing. So they made this one, and it just felt so much like they was trying to be a reboot. And again, I don't understand why Kate Beckinsale is here. It just felt like, oh, Kate Beckinsale, people like her, so we're just gonna put her in this. It's not gonna make sense, but she's gonna be in here, and nothing about it really makes sense. And honestly, you could go into this movie without watching the previous films, because it's a completely different story. The vampire liking conflict, it's there, but it's not really there in the way you want it to. In fact, it's more of vampire versus the government, and it's really dumb. It really should have never gone to this extent. I have no idea why they put it there. And when you're having government officials in a franchise like this, that's when you know the series is really going downhill. And the story in general here is not really interesting. I didn't care about Celine, and I especially didn't care about her relation with her daughter. They try to get you to care about them. The problem is, it just feels so half-assed. It feels so forced. It feels like, oh, you need to care for them. We're trying to add this emotional stuff to the film, and it doesn't really work at all. If Eve was in this movie, the movie could have been a lot better, honestly. It's just because of the fact that Eve is so forced down your throats, and they introduce her so quickly, and they do whatever you can to care for her, and it just doesn't really work at all, I have to say. And they try to get you to like these characters, and again, it just doesn't really work at all. I will definitely give it to them for trying. Like, they definitely did try to do something different, but like I said, they really did fail when it comes to the screenplay. And there's so many ridiculous things in this film. Like, Celine constantly throughout this movie is this ridiculous recurring thing where anytime any supernatural connection happens, she thinks it's Michael. So constantly throughout this movie, you'll hear her go, Michael, Michael, oh my god, Michael, Michael. It's so fucking annoying, honestly. And I'm not gonna lie, as much as I like Scott Speedman as Michael, like I said, they hasn't really given him anything to do, and they try to keep him alive in this one. I honestly would have preferred if they just killed him off in the second one, so he didn't have to be here, so we could just let the character die and let this be a full-on reboot. But because of the fact that Michael is still out there, she constantly thinks that anything calling out to her is Michael, and it's really, really annoying, and Scott Speedman didn't even want to be in this movie, and it very much shows. You can tell that he wanted nothing to do with this. Kevin Grevioux is in here. None of the original cast is in this movie, and for good reason. It's because, why would you want to continue after you kind of wrapped it up in the second one? It just feels so ridiculous to continue this series. And the cinematography, oh my god, the cinematography has gone bad here. I'm not sure what happened, honestly. I really don't know. The practical effects in the first one were really well done. They didn't look cheesy, they didn't look too over the top. Some of it was a little bit silly, but it worked for the most part. Here, I don't know what happened, but the cinematography is awful, honestly. The lichens look terrible in this movie. They look like something out of a video game, and I get that that's what Scott Coven was trying to do here. These are not video games, though. They're movies, and I constantly felt like I was watching a video game, and not in a good way. The first two felt like video games because they were silly. This feels like a video game because of how impractical the lichens really look. And there is this one lichen in the film, and I swear to God, I burst out into laughter. It involves Celine trying to fight this huge-ass lichen. It's pretty funny, honestly. It's very unintentionally funny. Maybe the funniest scene in the Underworld series so far. I nearly lost it, and the cinematography here is very, very bad. I really thought the lichens looked bad, and the score as well is just very bland. There's really nothing to it. And the ending to this movie is 89 minutes long, and it is a mess, honestly. It takes us about 20 minutes to actually get into the story. Like, Eve is not introduced till 28 minutes in, and very quickly she's at the facility. We see that go down. It just feels like this movie didn't have much of a direction. The only reason Eve is thrown in here is to give the movie some sort of plot, because other than that, it'd just be, you know, Celine a facility for the whole movie, and I definitely don't want to see that. I kind of would. It definitely was a little bit more interesting once we got into the actual story, but I just found it to be very repetitive, and I just found it to be very unnecessary, and I just feel like this was just here to keep the series alive, and the series has gone now from, you know, a very simple tale of good versus evil to now a B-movie of sorts of survival, and it really does show how far the series has really gone. So overall, guys, Underworld Awakening is by far the worst movie in the Underworld franchise so far. It has very bad characters, a very underutilized story, and it doesn't realize its full potential. Like I said, if you would have scrapped Selena out of this movie, it could have been a lot better. But it's not the worst thing ever. The movie didn't really piss me off as much as you think it did. Sure, this movie maybe infuriated me, but that's only because it didn't realize its potential. It got very self-serious, and I'm not entirely sure why. But I will give them to this movie for trying. I will give it to them for trying to do something different. And for that reason, I didn't completely despise this movie. There are some good scenes in there. There are some things they try to do. But in general, this is the most messy film we've had in the Underworld franchise. It doesn't feel like an Underworld movie. It feels like something completely different. The lichens feel like such an afterthought, as well as Michael, and in general, it just felt like this was supposed to be a reboot and instead turned into something that was more of a parody of itself, and I am definitely going to give Underworld Awakening a 1 out of 5 or a D-. So overall, guys, my review, also rant of Underworld Awakening. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie. And finally, guys, I'm coming up to the Underworld series. So my next review will, in fact, be for the first 2017 movie review. And that, of course, will be for Underworld Blood Wars, which I'm not all looking forward to, but we'll have to see. Maybe Tobias Menzies can save it. I doubt he can, but we'll have to see. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for Underworld Blood Wars. And we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.